Hello, I am Jay, and this is Relax with Jay. I create calming videos that allow you to relax and or drift off to sleep. If you enjoy my videos and find them helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe, and click on the notification bell. I hope you enjoy this video and may it bring you restful sleep. Tonight, I'll be reading the first part of the second chapter of the book called Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. If you enjoyed this chapter and would like me to read more, please let me know. Chapter 2. At 3 o'clock precisely, I was at Baker Street, but Holmes had not yet returned. The landlady informed me that he had left the house shortly after 8 o'clock in the morning. I sat down beside the fire, however, with the intention of awaiting him, however long he might be. I was already deeply interested in his inquiry, for, though I was surrounded by none of the grim and strange features which were associated with the two crimes which I had already recorded, still, the nature of the case and the exalted station of his client gave it a character of its own. Indeed, apart from the nature of the investigation which my friend had on hand, there was something in his masterly grasp of a situation and his keen, incisive reasoning which made it a pleasure to me to study his system of work and to follow the quick, subtle methods by which he disentangled the most inextricable mysteries. So accustomed which I was to his invariable success, that the very possibility of his failing has ceased to enter into my head. It was close upon 4 before the door opened, and a dark-looking groom, I had clipped and side-whiskered, with an inflamed face and disreputable clothes, walked into the room. Accustomed as I was to my friend's amazing powers in the use of disguises, I had to look 3 times before I was certain that it was indeed he. With a nod, he vanished into the bedroom, whence he emerged in 5 minutes, thread-suited and respectable as an old. Putting his hands into his pockets, he stretched out his legs in front of the fire and laughed heartily for some time. "Well, really," he cried, and then he choked and laughed again until he was obliged to lie back, limp and helpless, in the chair. "What is it? It's quite too funny. I am sure you could never guess how I employed my morning or what I ended by doing. I can't imagine. I suppose that you have been watching the habits and perhaps the house of Miss Irene Adler." "Quite so, but the sequel was rather unusual. I will tell you, however. I left the house a little after 8 o'clock this morning in the character of a groom out of work. There's a wonderful sympathy and free missionary among horsey men. Be one of them and you will know all there is to know. I soon found Brignon Lodge. It is a bijou villa with a garden at the back, but built out in front right up to the road. 2 stories, Chubb walk to the door, large sitting room on the right side, well furnished, with long windows almost to the door, and those precocious English window fasteners which a child could open. Behind there was nothing remarkable, save that the passage window could be reached from the top of the coach house. I walked round it and examined it closely from every point of view, but without noting anything else of interest. I then lodged down the street and found, as I expected, that there was a mew in a lane which ran down by one wall of the garden. I lent the ostlers a hand in rubbing down the horses, and received in exchange 2 pence, a glass of half and half, 2 fills of shag tobacco, and as much information as I could desire about Miss Irene Adler. To say nothing of half a dozen other people in the neighborhood in whom I was not in the least interested, but whose biographies I was compelled to listen to. And what of Irene Adler? I asked. Oh, she has turned all the men's heads down in that part. She is in the daintiest thing under a brunette on this planet. So she, they say, serpentine muse to a man. She lives quietly, sings at concerts, drives out at 5 every day, and returns at 7 sharp for dinner. Seldom goes out at other times, except when she sings. Has only one male visitor, but a good deal of him. He is dark, handsome, and dashing, never calls less than once a day, and often twice. He is a Mr. Godfrey Norton, of the Inner Temple. See the advantages of a cabman as a confidant? They had driven him home a dozen times from Serpentine Mews, and knew all about him. When I had listened to all they had to tell, I began to walk up and down near Brownie Lodge once more, and to think over my plan of campaign. This Godfrey Norton was evidently an important factor in the matter. He was a lawyer. That sounded ambiguous. What was the relationship between him, and what was the objective of his repeated visits? Was she his client, his friend, or his mistress? If she former, she had probably transferred the photograph to his keeping. If the latter, it was less likely. On the issue of this question depend whether I shall continue my work at Brownie Lodge or turn my attention to the gentleman's chamber in Temple. It was a delicate point and widened the field of my inquiry. I fear that I bore you with these details, but I have to let you see my little difficulties if you are to understand the situation. I am following you closely, I answered. I was still balancing the matter in my mind when a handsome cab drove up a Browning Lodge, and a gentleman sprung out. He was a remarkable handsome man, dark, aquiline, and moustached, evidently the man of whom I had heard. He appeared to be in a very great hurry, shouted to the cabman to wait, and brushed past the maid who opened the door with the air of a man who was on thoroughly at home.